All right, be honest. Raise your hand if you came just because you thought there was free donuts. All right, so thanks a lot for that, Alan. My name's Scott Hudler. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Dunkin. Just a little bit more about me. I am the short guy. I was going through this last night, and my son looked over my shoulder, and he was like, "Dad, you were really, really short." I said, "I'm an average height guy, but Gronk is really, really tall." So as Alan mentioned, I've been at Dunkin for about 10 years. October 1st will be 10 years. A variety of roles on the consumer engagement side, brand marketing side, product development, brand strategy. Prior to that at Mars was the brand manager for Snickers. And then prior to that, worked for Popeye's Chicken. So clearly a string of progressively healthier companies in my career. Started off my career at a really small agency in Atlanta called Duffy Communications. And for those of you that are in the agency world here, unbelievable partnerships. We have some great ones here in Boston with the folks from Hill Holiday, Digitas, Sapient, great relationships, and we can't do any of the things that we do without our partners. And I get to come up here and share a lot of the great work that our partners are doing and bringing to us. So that's a real fun part of my job. Would love to hear from you on Twitter, @ScottHudler, what you like, what you don't like, things I do well, things I do poorly. Always welcome to feedback. So this is the original Dunkin' Donuts. So I know we're in Boston, but not everyone is from Boston. I grew up in Georgia, and I lived probably about 400 miles from the closest Dunkin' Donuts when I was growing up. So this is the original Dunkin' Donuts in Quincy, Mass. Founded there in 1950. It's still there. If you're ever in Quincy, it's still there with that sign. Hopefully there's some different cars in the parking lot now, but we're still there. We have about 11,800 locations across the globe, and the interesting fact is about 10% of those locations are right here in Boston. We have over 1,100 Boston locations here in Boston, and it was great when I moved here that people told me this is how you give directions in Boston. You go to the Dunkin' Donuts, take a right, go to the next Dunkin' Donuts. So we serve about 5 million customers a day. And we're a little bit biased, and sorry about the headline there, but we think we're one of the world's best brands through a variety of reasons. Probably on this page, the thing we're most proud of is the fact that we've been named the #1 coffee chain by consumers through Brand Keys for 10 years in a row. Not coincidentally, I've been at Dunkin' for 10 years. So that's the one that's most important to us because it's voted on by consumers. And I think as we are continuing the evolution of this brand, we are a 66-year-old brand, but it's still early days in what we are going to be and how we're going to be around for the next 66 years. So we really put a lot of focus on the consumer, and I'd say we are recentering ourselves as a brand to make sure that we actually do consumer first and not just put it on a slide or say it in presentations because it sounds like the right thing to say, but that we actually put the consumer first in everything that we're doing. Successful product launch. We've expanded outside of the four walls of the restaurant, and we sell packaged coffee in grocery stores. We sell K-Cups in grocery stores. We've launched a loyalty program. We've focused on building our mobile presence, and we're the world's largest seller of donuts, bagels, muffins, iced coffee, and hot drip coffee. So a great story, and we're still growing. So of the 8,500, give or take a few locations in the United States, we've opened 2,000 since 2009. So a lot of growth, and as you travel across the country, hopefully you're seeing that when you go to places like Atlanta, Las Vegas, LA, you're starting to see Dunkin' Donuts. We opened our first Dunkin' in San Francisco, in the San Francisco DMA earlier this year. We have the second one opening later this year. We feel like there is still a ton of room for Dunkin' Donuts in the United States. Now, every market might not look like Boston with 1,100, but we think there are a number of markets where we can continue to grow this brand. All right, quick trivia question, and we'll go by show of hands. First one to answer correctly gets a $100 Dunkin' Donuts gift card. How many countries are there Dunkin' locations? And I'll give you a hint. It's more than the United States in these 3 countries right here. Show of hands. Not all at once.
34.
Close. But higher.
42.
Really close, but higher. Even closer, but higher.
44.
You got it, 44. All right. Please see me afterwards, and you are the proud winner of a $100 Dunkin' Donuts gift card. All right, so as Alan said, one question that people do ask when I introduce myself and my title, they're like, really? You're the Chief Digital Officer for Dunkin' Donuts. What do you do? Make sure you don't run out of sprinkles? So no, that would be a miracle if we could figure that out. But as Alan said, every role, the Chief Digital Officer title role is dramatically different from every organization. So in some organizations, it's a very IT-driven role. In some organizations, it's a very marketing-driven role. We are the latter. So obviously, based on my background, coming up through the marketing ranks, but we think about, and it's super cliche to say that we're not just a donut company, we're a technology company. I'm not saying that. But we have to think like that because of how much technology is changing not only our lives, but as marketers, the way we interact with consumers. If we're not thinking of technology first and digital first, we're in a lot of trouble because this is how consumers are engaging with brands and how they're living their lives. And I'm fortunate enough to have a boss and our CEO, Nigel Travis, who is not only a techie, but has some experience with companies like Blockbuster, Papa John's, where technology has really transformed those businesses. So he is incredibly supportive of what we're doing and how it plays a key role in everything we're going to do as a brand. So about 6-9 months ago, we launched a 5-part strategy for the Dunkin' Donuts US business. And technology plays a role across all of these. While number 4 is be a leader in digital and very spelled out as to what we want to do, it cuts across all of these. So whether it's how we build our coffee culture, one of the things that, if you experience the Dunkin' Donuts brand in New England, you probably think of us as a coffee company first. If you experience the brand in, say, Atlanta, you think of us as a donut company. So how can we use digital and technology to help build that coffee culture, in addition to what we're doing from a product standpoint and a positioning and a messaging standpoint? Faster and improved innovation cuts across all parts of our business, whether it's bringing the latest and greatest coffee beverage to market, the latest and greatest donut, or the latest and greatest innovation for our app and making the ability to order on your phone even faster for our loyalty members. We talk about targeted value and pricing. So our perks program is really at the center of this. How do we make sure we're focusing on the individual consumer? I like to say often that we are, and not an original quote, but we're trying to go from using a bazooka to reach consumers to using a laser and getting very precise with what that individual consumer wants in terms of right offer, right time, right place. Being a leader in digital, pretty obvious how we want to do that. And I think the great thing about us as a brand is we're in the retail business, and there's a lot of folks that are doing retail very, very well. Fortunately or unfortunately for us, one of the ones doing it the absolute best, in my opinion, is in our category and is a direct competitor. And they do an amazing job, and I love that because it forces us to follow and make sure that the bar is here, that we're doing things that not only get to those guys, but we can surpass them down the road. And they do an amazing job, and I love having that challenge and that fight every day. And then the last is improving the restaurant experience. So we've all seen good examples of how technology can make the experience better, and we've seen some that aren't so good. So my focus is how can we make sure that as we think about building new restaurants, that technology and the tools that we have as a digital business can make that experience better, whether that impacts how you wait in line, what you see in the stores. And then also from a mobile standpoint around ordering in the store, or ordering and be able to go pick it up in store and avoid the line. That's a huge issue. It was the number one thing we heard from our consumers, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. All right, so this is the world that we're all facing, and we all know this. Multiple streams of content everywhere. A quarter of homes in the United States do not have cable. 1 billion plus people on Facebook and Google properties through YouTube, bigger than any network that anyone can find. So we're going to still buy ads on television because it works really well for us. But I know off the bat, I'm missing 25% of US households. It's kind of a big deal. So when you dimensionalize it, this is the challenge we have. We're all chasing the elusive millennial. So here's two young women, target audience for probably almost every brand outside of, Geritol and other things. So how do we reach these two? Because they're clearly engaged in, the woman on the right who's watching TV. I am sure that Dunkin' Donuts ad she is seeing right now, she is repeating the USP back to her friend. So as there's more devices, there's more distractions, we have got to make sure that we are doing things that reach these types of consumers who are distracted, who are not paying attention to messages. How do we integrate ourselves, but also create content that cuts through all of this, that will make this woman put down I think that's an old school Sidekick and her magazine and pay attention to what we're doing. So we think about it under kind of 3 big buckets as we think about consumer engagement, and I'll go through these. The first is mobile, and I feel like I'm definitely preaching to the converted. I have a meeting right after this, which is our franchisee advisory council. This is clearly the highlight of my day right now. So this is a different audience than that will be. But we think about mobile, and we all know the stats. It's all we do every day. We're on our devices. We multitask with it. It runs our lives. It runs our kids' lives. We would be lost without it. We've all seen the great stats about it. It's the first thing we check in the morning, the last thing we check. We'd rather do without television, food, sustenance, but as long as we have our phone, I guess you could order. So that's all you need. So this is how we focus on it, and it's really the center of everything we're doing as a digital brand. Not only with our app, which I'll talk about, but in terms of media and partnerships and targeting. This is where we want to be. And when we think about consumer first, we also think mobile first in terms of how we're going to reach that consumer. So we did launch an app back in 2012. When I took this role, that was one of the things that really attracted me to the role, not as Chief Digital Officer, but as Head of Consumer Engagement, was that at that time, our digital strategy was essentially a blank piece of paper. And those are the challenges we all want from a career standpoint, to be able to go in and go off and craft something. So we launched an app pretty quickly. It was clearly a 1.0 version of our app. We relaunched another version a few months ago, back in May, which had in the New York market the ability to order and pick up, and then we launched it in other places. And this is an example of how we're using technology to make the guest experience better. The first version was great because now you could pay with your app. And that was great. Not only was there a consumer benefit, I didn't have to fumble for a credit card, I didn't have to hand it over, I didn't have to pay with cash and make change, but there's also a benefit for us as a restaurant, as an operator. Paying with the mobile app is faster than swiping a credit card, clearly faster than paying with cash. So it moves people through the line faster. And if you've ever been to a Dunkin' Donuts in Boston in the morning, that's pretty critical. How do we get people through the line faster while still delivering a great guest experience? So we went through and thought, and this was number one from a consumer standpoint, I don't want to talk to anyone, and I want to skip the line. So think about it from the consumer standpoint. I can order on my phone, I can avoid the line, but now think about it from our standpoint. The consumer thinks about the wait time from the second they hit the door. We can't measure that. We can measure the time of when they key in the order and send it back to the prep area. That's when our clock starts. The consumer clock starts as soon as they walk in the door. So if they're waiting in line 5 minutes, but then still get their food within 2 minutes, that's 7 minutes. That's probably not ideal in the morning when you're in a hurry. So this was, since we started knocking holes in walls and building drive-thrus, this was the biggest change to operations that we've ever had. And we know from all of our research with consumers, speed is the differentiator for Dunkin' Donuts. There are other brands where you can make it yourself for a super cheap cup of coffee. There's other brands where you can have a nice experience, but it's going to take a while. We want to be between the two. We want to deliver a great guest experience, super high quality cup of coffee, but we want to do it at speed. And that's really important to our members. So as we launched on-the-go ordering, we knew that we had to go big. We had to do something that would go back to those two girls sitting in the dorm room, and if you remember the picture, clearly not picking up their trash. How do we make sure that we're reaching those girls, or that consumer who is in a mobile-first world and something that's going to clearly break through? So we wanted to go big and jump in head first, and we meant that literally. How do we go forward and create something that's visually arresting, that people can see, and people will something that will survive the 3-second audition, as Facebook calls it in the newsfeed. So we created a campaign with our partners at Digitas called What the Fast. So the intent was a campaign and a platform that will make your Dunkin' experience so fast, you'll say, what the fast? And if it's bad, you'll use WTF in another way. So our objective was to pull off the world's fastest Dunkin' run. So we've all been a part of the Dunkin' run in the afternoon. We wanted to make sure that we could do the world's fastest Dunkin' run. So we found an athlete, Ellen Brennan, who is officially the world's fastest flying woman. And the crazy idea was have her stand on top of a mountain, jump, and I'll stop right there. That's crazy enough. And at about 120 miles an hour, swoop in and grab her order. So place the order on top of the mountain, jump, grab the bag, and then deploy the chute. So my reaction naturally when the agency pitched this idea was WTF, but a slightly different way. So a lot of work, went to France and shot this, a lot of practice. If you get a chance, there's a great 7-minute behind the scenes video on YouTube, and one of the funny things in there is as she's testing the bag to pick up the bag with Velcro, she's skiing down the bunny slope. And then she stops and says, yeah, I don't really like this. This is super scary. It's like, you jump off mountains for a living. How is this scary? So we put something together, and I am not a big fan of the concept of the teaser campaign. We generally don't do them. I'm just not a huge fan. But for this one, we did it. The consumer, for once, was secondary on this. We wanted to get our franchisees excited. We wanted to get our crew members excited. So we put together a teaser spot and launched it a few weeks before we turned on the mobile ordering platform, really as a means to create some excitement and build some buzz within the Dunkin' community internally. We probably produce more new products than anybody in the QSR business. So every 4 weeks, there's 2 to 4 new products coming into the system. So rallying the troops around today's flavor of iced coffee, while exciting, can sometimes start to fall on deaf ears because of the constant repetition of that. So we wanted to do something a little different to get the group excited. So really focused on internal crew excitement. There was definitely a consumer benefit to that as well. And then as we had to transition to the consumer communication, we wanted, again, to be something that would be visually arresting, would clearly communicate in an over-the-top way how this new on-the-go platform can make your life better, can speed up your Dunkin' run. So a lot of work went into to to this spot, but I'm going to run it now, focused on how we're really driving speed at Dunkin.
Watch how fast I can get my Dunkin.
Now, DD Perks members can order ahead, skip the line in store, and keep on.
That'll be coming to a store in Cambridge later this summer. If there's any buildings you want to wingsuit off of. So very focused on delivering the speed message. How do we launch it in a new and different way? It's just because this is an absolutely new platform that we've had. And people don't necessarily think of us as having innovative technology. We are in some places still consider us a stodgy New England donut company, and we clearly are not that. But as we take the brand outside of New England, we've got to make sure that we are positioned and seen as a forward-thinking brand and a forward-thinking marketing organization.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just from a perspective. So the person that you selected, she's pretty famous, right? I
Yes.
haven't met her, but she's pretty famous.
Mhm.
How important is it for your organization, from a brand standpoint, that she endorse a brand outside of this commercial? Because now she'll be seen, et cetera. I've always wondered about that, because nowadays with the surveillance society, you have to be so cautious picking somebody who is a celebrity that you're using to endorse a brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at it as she's clearly a Dunkin' ambassador. We ask that before we do any deals. Now, is our expectation that 100% of the time she will only drink Dunkin' Donuts coffee? Well, it's not possible. If she's in LA, we have 15 restaurants in all of LA. But we look at, are you going to do anything that would embarrass us outside of the four walls? Drinking a competitor's coffee, while not ideal, that's not necessarily embarrassing us too much. Doing things that we read about a lot of celebrities doing, that would embarrass us, which is why we generally shy away from those types of deals. So the second area we focus on is media and striking that right balance between traditional media and emerging media. But as we started on this, one of the big things as we've come across over the last really year is, as a brand, we were 66 years old. We had no mission. And as you think about great brands, they all have a mission. So what were we coming to work for every day? How are we delivering that to consumers? So our CEO was great. He sent about 7 of us off-site to Babson for 2 days and said, go figure out how to make Dunkin' win in the next 5 years. That's your only agenda item. And number 1 on our list was, what is our mission? Because if you think about Dunkin', both more from an internal standpoint, we had private equity ownership back in '05. Kind of everyone knew we were going to go through an IPO, and that kind of came. There was an IPO honeymoon. And then after that, it's like, okay, now we're just coming to work every day. What's here? What's driving us to be something bigger than all of us here? So we created the mission of we energize, inspire, and reward America, cut across 3 different buckets. So thinking about how do we do that with our guests, how do we do it with our employees, and not just the people that work for Dunkin' Brands, but for the 300,000 people that work in our stores, and also for our franchisees. There's some amazing stories of the American dream within our franchisee community. Folks who came over and started from another country, who immigrated to this country, started working in the restaurant as an employee, became a franchisee, and have now built, in some cases, significant business empires of hundreds of Dunkin' Donuts locations. Unbelievable stories and how they have given back to their communities. So we wanted to make sure that we capture that, because we felt like we needed something that was driving all of us. And we worked with our partners at Hill Holiday to really say, okay, that's a great mission. Now, what is the essence of Dunkin'? And we work through this concept of positive energy, which is what the Dunkin' brand is. So we've always been there for you. We are your jump start in the morning. We're your pit stop in the afternoon. but that's very functional. When you think about the emotion of the brand, that's something that we've been sorely lacking for a while. And the emotion of positive energy is what a guest experiences when you walk in first thing in the morning and you're greeted with a smile and your order's right and your coffee tastes just right, and that's how you start your day. Or when you're in the afternoon, in between meetings, you have 5 minutes to get somewhere, but you really need that afternoon pick-me-up. And you go into Dunkin', and again, you're greeted with a smile, something as simple as someone holding the door for you when you walk in. That is positive energy. It's all of us being our best every day. And we have to deliver that to our guests. And I think the work that we've come up with the Hill team, led by Mr. D'Amico over here to my right, has been fantastic. And this is what America Runs on Dunkin' is all about. And so I say this every interview, every meeting. Let me be perfectly clear. We are not abandoning America Runs on Dunkin'. I hope America Runs on Dunkin' literally outlives me as a person. That is one of the greatest pieces of creative, the greatest tagline. And for us, it's more than just a tagline. It's really the essence of our brand. We think when it was written almost 10 plus years ago, it was incredibly aspirational from a geographic standpoint. As we think about it today, it's aspirational. We still have some geographies to conquer. I'm looking at you, Pacific Northwest. But we think that it is how America lives. We're all living in this overstressed, over-scheduled world, and we need that corner man. We need that support. But we really needed to change the conversation. So we had gotten into this rut, if you will, of focusing as a consumer communication just on LTO products. So like I said, we deliver more LTO products than anyone in the industry. And we could have a whole separate session on debating if that's a good move or a bad move. But for us, for the last 6 years, it's been a great strategy. It has worked really well. But as we think about the consumer communication, we had stopped communicating the soul of the brand. Why did I come to Dunkin' in the first place? Sure, the Heath Bar iced coffee is amazing, but there's something more to it. It's the positive energy, and we had not talked about that for 6+ years. So we wanted to put together a contemporary update for America Runs on Dunkin'. So if you think back, and if you get a chance today when you get back to the office, go Google or look on YouTube. Doing things is what I like to do. The very first spot that launched America Runs on Dunkin', a 60-second musical masterpiece that was put together. But the essence of that rings true today with this. It's just done from a more modern point of view because that work is 11 years old. So we wanted to put together this contemporary update, and the campaign that the great team at Hill came up with is called KEEPON. So we all need to think about that in the focus of our everyday lives. We're all fighting for something. We're all busy. We're trying to be a good employee. We're trying to be a good spouse or partner. We're trying to be a good parent. We're trying to be a good child. We have to keep on. We have to keep on fighting, loving, winning, losing. That's what makes us who we are. And that's where Dunkin' comes in as your support system, as your corner man. And that's something that we had neglected for about 6 years. So I'm going to play the launch spot that we fired off for KEEPON about 6 weeks ago. And would love your thoughts on it. We're really proud of it and think the team at Hill did a great job capturing what positive energy entails at Dunkin'. So launch spot, and we'll be airing the next round of work in the Olympics coming up in just a few weeks, and we're really excited about that. So now that we have this great message to communicate, we've got to figure out how do we strike the right balance between traditional and emerging media. So TV still works really, really well for us as a brand, and it's the lion's share of our spend. But we can't neglect emerging media and the other things that are out there, which are how consumers are engaging with brands. So we've talked a lot about how we can use it to scale, and a great example recently was National Donut Day, which we're biased, but we think is the holiest day of the year. So we really wanted to use social as opposed to putting a bunch of spots on TV and radio about come into Dunkin' for National Donut Day. It was more about the day, or less about the day, but more about Dunkin' as the leader and engaging consumers in different ways. So one of the key things that we did was engaged Instagram influencers to create great content using donuts and to talk about Donut Day as the day and Dunkin' as the owner of that day. So saw significant lift from a social engagement over prior years when we've done this. Our goal for National Donut Day is not only to better what we did the previous year, but to own the day. So there are other donut competitors out there who we're competing with. We want to own the day. We are the leader in donuts. We should always own National Donut Day. It was also one of the greatest sales days in the history of Dunkin' Donuts, which that helps a lot as well. But we haven't limited it to just Donut Day. We have been leveraging geo-filters with Snapchat for the past 12 months or so. When we did the one with Valentine's Day, my kids told me what Avi means, which I felt pretty old when they did that. But really leveraging that and those filters around whether it's pumpkin season in the fall, Valentine's Day, which is surprisingly a big holiday. So don't be insulted if your spouse or partner gives you a heart-shaped donut for Valentine's Day. It's the sincerest form of flattery. And then also National Donut Day, and we'll use it for National Coffee Day as well. But the fact that we have things like this that we can use to not only engage consumers, but they can then share for us on our behalf is fantastic in an area that we're going to continue to focus on moving forward. We've also dipped into creating original content. So we did this with our partners at Sapient last year for Gronk and Big Papi's Summer Chill. If you remember, they recorded a country western song, a Spanish love song, which was interesting, an incredibly radio-friendly pop song. And having let's call it what it is. This is ridiculous content, but you've got two icons of not just New England, but of American sports, and Rob Gronkowski and David Ortiz, taking them out of their natural habitat of being big, bad athlete. And these guys are incredible to work with because they want to do things like this. They're totally fine, poking fun at themselves, making themselves vulnerable, and we were really pleased with how it turned out. The first one was last year, and there was an event that we had later in the fall with these two guys together, and Ortiz comes up to the guy, Tom Manchester, who runs sports marketing. He's like, hey, Tom, we're going to do that thing with Gronk again this year, right? So he wanted to do it. I don't know if he plans on having a singing career post the Red Sox, but we'd love to be a part of it. But creating content like this that breaks through, we saw great pickup not only through traditional paid channels, but through a number of not just social, the growth we saw from a social standpoint, but when you have these two guys, it gets picked up by the Deadspins, the Barstools, Sports Nation, For the Win, those types of outlets, which does a great job of extending our brand into some new areas. We also focus on how do we blend the traditional and social. I know these are areas that all brand marketers work through. Working with the team at Trillia has been great to put together a program with America's Got Talent for the last 2 years. Biggest show of the summer, multiple integrations into the show, everything from cups on set, as you see here with Heidi Klum, to integrations into the show, into the content, and then social extensions with the Dunkin' Save to keep people into the show. Great example of traditional social integrations. We're back for year 2, and we think it's a program that is a model of what we want to do moving forward. And then lastly on media is taking that to some big tentpole properties. So while we do this with our local partnerships like the Red Sox in Boston, the Yankees and Mets in New York, we as a brand don't really have a national property. So we don't sponsor any sports leagues, partly because of our footprint and partly because there's others in those spaces. But one area where we're really excited about that we'll be launching in a few weeks is around the Olympics. So a great example of mixing traditional with traditional broadcast media with the digital. So with Snapchat integrations focused around digital and also multicultural around the Spanish language broadcast of the Olympics. So Nick Dunham, who runs media for us and the Trillo team, have put together a great blueprint for how we'll continue to attack events from both the traditional and digital standpoint. And then the last area is around one-to-one marketing. So how do we create that going from a bazooka to using a laser? So we have continued to try and build a strong digital ecosystem across the app, our email, which still delivers great results, our loyalty program, and our social connections across a number of different channels. Perks is really the foundation of that. How do we build that one-to-one relationship with our guests? So we launched this in February of 2014, and we've continued to build the user base. We're up to just under 5 million members. And the way we use it is to build to targeted one-to-one media. So I want to know that Karen Kaplan comes into this specific Dunkin' and what she orders every day. So if Karen orders the veggie egg white, I probably don't want to send her the big and toasted sandwich offering because she's probably not going to eat it. And vice versa, if Chris D'Amico likes the big and toasted, I don't want to send him the veggie egg white. We want to go and take this from mass personalization to individual targeting. And we're building this by using data. And I know all of you are Perks members, but for the one in the room who's too embarrassed to admit you aren't, I'll run through quickly how it works. So you get a Dunkin' card, enroll it at DD Perks, you get a free beverage. For every $1 that you spend, you get 5 Perks points. We then start to build that personalization based on what you're spending. So as soon as you come in, we have incredible first-party data to know what you are spending and target you with either price-pointed offers or bonus point offers to accrue points faster. When you get to 200 points, you get a free beverage. And just for the record, we were doing points way before other coffee companies were doing points in their loyalty program. We want to build this from the 4.9 million. How do we continue to grow frequency and spend? And as I talked about, the mass personalization and getting that to true individualization. So I know exactly how we're delivering that right offer to the right person at the right time to make sure that we carry that through all of our communications, focusing on that offer. All right, so wrapping it up before questions, I would say this is such an amazing time to be doing what we're doing, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, agency, brand, technology. It's a great time. Embrace the change. There's so much out there. And for brand marketers and agencies, test and learn often. I think we fail. If we're not failing enough, we like to keep our failures quiet, but that's how we learn. So we're doing a ton of A/B testing, whether it's an offer. How do we get to look at that from a creative standpoint? Make sure that you're testing and that you have a data story to stand on. Put mobile at the center, first and best, always the right place to be for that. And then just think about how can you create that personal connection. So whether it's Gronk and Poppy from a sports partnership standpoint, it's KEEPON from a this is what I'm feeling in my life right now. Think about how you can build that personal connection. And then lastly, strike that right balance between linear and digital. It's different for every brand. There's no formula that you can say, oh, it has to be X% or you're doing it all wrong. It works differently for everybody. The great thing is with all this technology comes a lot of data and the chance to have some incredible attribution so you can make the right choices and kind of move away from the 50% of my budget's working, I just don't know which 50%, and get to a very targeted, educated, fact-based decision from how you want to spend your media. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Thank you very much.